Gentlemen, welcome to Armchair Producers, episode 81. I am one of your hosts, George Karen, freshly clean shaven and looking like I'm about 14 years old. And I am joined, as always, with the man, the myth, the Rocket Man cover man, Mr. Travis Croft. Sir, how are you?
I am fine and dandy, and I feel like I should be waiting for the police to come and arrest me for consorting with such a young person.
It's not lewd. We're not doing anything inappropriate.
No, not at all. No, but I mean, it's just like, it's appearances matter, all right? And here I am talking to a 12-year-old boy in a video chat. That's a bad look.
Okay. I'm making sure that I'm watching movies that are still within my age bracket, nothing over 18.
If I had a girlfriend, she'd kill me. And I am joined by one of our longtime co-hosts here tonight. For those who are old enough fans to remember, we can see if we can. Right, yeah, he's there, but there he is.
Riley. I, for one, am thankful for the return of Rhinoceros, but I'm also thankful for social distancing because many people might remember that we would often be recording podcasts and suddenly Riley would make himself known gaseously, and it was foul. So
there's also that, but I've been on multiple video calls the last couple of days who decided rolling around on growling was an excellent pastime during the video calls. So he has rejoined the team after extensive negotiations with his agent. His asking price, let's just say George and I are 2 and 3 on a payroll.
Yep, he's an expensive fellow to have, but his
box office. He is box office gold.
It is true. It is true.
You pay for talent.
Yeah.
So for those who, if anybody does tune in and look at the chat, it's a video version of this. What inspired the suave new look?
Boredom.
Yeah,
the same reason that I generally cut my hair, that I do most things that aren't legitimately constructive or creative in my life. Boredom. And I was looking at myself whilst having a shower, and I thought, yeah, why not? It'll grow back either way.
You should have used it to raise some money from some people like I did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that would, involve planning, which... yeah, I just don't do.
Fair enough. It's it can't be a spontaneous fundraiser, really. Like, give me all your money, or a beer gets it.
Yeah, I'm not exactly popular enough to oh, well done. I raised $7 for charity.
I would have thought the same, but it did help that I was in a workplace where everybody was very excited to see the end of a beard. So I think I paid $1,500. So that was more. But you're right. You do have to kind of pimp yourself out a fair bit. You kind of have to kind of hassle people for money, and it's not cool. So, no one likes the. For my birthday this year, I'm fundraising for the Human Fund money for people. It's no one likes those birthday fundraisers.
Yeah, so boredom is as good an excuse as any. Maybe not good for the climate or anything like that, but.
Hey, it's just, boredom has started wars and, ended empires, I'm sure, over the years, like frickin' Hitler was sitting back in his bunker in 1940 going, getting kind of sick of his whole, dominating Europe thing. What else is there to do? It's like that bit in the video game where you see the level says, this is intended for higher levels only, and you're like, pish posh, I can do that.
Yeah. I like to think that Hitler decided to end it all just because he really wanted to shave off his moustache, but he wasn't allowed. His PR people were like, no, it's iconic. You can't get rid of that.
It's your trademark.
I'm like, I'll teach you. Bang.
The Hitler brand is all about genocide and facial hair. You really can't. You cut one or the other. We're really going to see the end of this thing. We don't know how you're going to fare in the next election about the Mo. This podcast has taken a very strange.
It has.
Hitler has been invoked in the first 5 minutes. It's all downhill from here.
Let's get back on track, shall we? Should we talk about this week's Chain movie?
We should, because there's not much else I've had a chance to watch this week. So
no, Travis is cheating on me with multiple other podcasts, and I feel left behind and really sad. So I'm just going to eat a bucket of ice cream.
It's not you, it's me. But no, I have to watch. I had to watch Creepshow 2 this week for King for a Day.
Okay.
Stephen King podcast. Have you ever seen either of the Creepshow movies?
I've never watched a Creepshow movie. No.
It's it was kind of good though. Like, I mean, I guess I wasn't going to talk about this, but it is. But did you ever have that thing at sort of that rite of passage in the UK? At least it's a thing here, and I think in the US, where you go around to a friend's place when you're like 13 or 14, and like watch horror movies all night. The ones that you are probably not technically supposed to watch.
We were the house that people came to for that because we always had a huge library of videos recorded off TV stuff. I remember the two R-rated movies that I first watched, and I had a bunch of my friends over to watch, and it was RoboCop and Rambo.
I don't exactly horror films, but I guess they're close. I mean, Rambo was quite violent. Rambo was very violent, but I think it was kind of a tradition. At least I know I had it, where I would go to a friend's place on Friday night, and we worked our way over a series of months through all the Friday the 13th movies, amongst other ones in there, like a Candyman and stuff like that. But that was kind of what Creepshow felt like. It was kind of a movie that would have felt very much at home in the middle of one of those sleepovers at like midnight with about 4 or 5 15-year-old kids watching his film, in the sense it really felt it was aimed squarely at that audience of like, bored, scared teenagers. And it was an anthology film, which was also strange. You do not see many of those anymore. Bring back the anthology film. I liked it. But it was, I didn't even realize about, I've never seen any of these films either. Firstly, it was written by Stephen King and George A. Romero together. But in the sense that George Romero wrote the screenplay, Stephen King wrote the story.
That's some horror royalty right there.
That's right. It's some talent involved in that. This director was some dude I'd never heard of, though. And interesting, the second episode of the 3 in the show, in the movie, was about a blob monster in the lake, for want of a better term. And apparently, you created trivia. The main special effects dude who was supposed to get the blob monster to work gave up and walked out of production halfway through, leaving a non-operable blob monster in his wake. No pun intended. And it was up to, I guess, his apprentice, underling, to try and get the blob monster to work and finish that segment of the movie. And that underling young guy who did that job was a guy named Greg Nicotero.
Holy shit, yeah.
So you're like, okay, well, there's a name we all know, and he's gone on to much, much bigger and better things. So if you look at it, like, where's some horror royalty? Right? Greg Nicotero, Stephen King, George Romero, all on the one project. And I didn't even realize that Greg Nicotero is actually behind. There's actually a Creepshow TV show that has been on the TV in the US, and the season 2's been greenlit and will go into production once, the COVID hits. And I'm like, well, it was just interesting. I didn't know that Greg Nicotero had done that TV show. Yeah. And I saw the movie, and I found out, he did do some of the work on this. And then you're like, he's made a TV show based on it. So it's kind of like James Cameron going back and making a Piranha 2 series based on, fuck you, I'm gonna get it right this time. But that's a segue into something we didn't mean to talk about. But if you are looking for something a little different, Creepshow 2, I actually really kind of liked it.
Okay.
I'm kind of really looking forward to seeing the first one now. It's old school 80s, horror, with 3 short films, and the wrap-up of connecting the 3 films was animated.
Okay.
Really weird, but really good.
Maybe that could be an idea for something like that. After this next chain movie session, which finishes my journey of 3, maybe we could do a bit of a run up to Halloween for some horror movies as a focus instead.
Well, maybe that'll be a challenge. We'll see once I know what your next chain film is. Let's see if we can focus the next chain movie to be something a little bit spooky.
Definitely. Okay. Speaking of the chain movie, this week we were following on from the Australian war movie classic Gallipoli. And it was directed by Peter Weir. That starred Mel Gibson. And we both really enjoyed it. It's still very, even though it's, 40 years old at this point almost, it's still incredibly poignant, very well made. We really, really rated it. So go back and listen to last week's episode if you want to hear about that. But following on, Peter Weir went on to direct this week's movie, which was Witness from 1985, starring Harrison Ford in his one and only to date Oscar-nominated Best Actor.
I was quite surprised. I read that and I was surprised. I would have thought he might have got one somewhere else along the route on the journeys, something like the Fugitive or something like that.
Yeah, but it's surprising. But when you watch this movie, it kind of is his best work, and I think this is possibly the movie that really got the Harrison Ford point across. Enough. He does it fantastically in this movie, and it totally diffuses the scenario. It's wonderful. But for those who do not know, Witness is the story of a young Amish boy who is the sole witness to a murder and policeman John Book, Harrison Ford's character, goes into hiding in the Amish country to protect him until the trial. That pretty much sums it up. But there's a lot more nuance to the story as it goes on. But this has got one hell of a cast behind it. Harrison Ford, Kelly McGillis, she's already been in a chain movie with
Top Gun.
Top Gun, yeah. Joseph Summer, who plays Schaefer, he's one of those faces that he's like one of those old school faces.
He was in lots of movies in the 80s. Usually he's like a police. That's Dirty Harry, so that's where I recognize him from.
Yeah. That's definitely him.
Because he played the president in X-Men Last Stand.
Oh, shit, yeah, he did, didn't he? Fuck. There's Alexander Godunov. I apologize for butchering his name, but he is the guy who beats the fuck out of Bruce Willis in Die Hard 1 and then ends up hanging. There's a relatively young Danny Glover, Paddy LuPone, first ever screen performance of Viggo Mortensen in there as well. And
Lucas Haas is the young boy.
Yes,
who was wonderful in this, but he also went on to be, do a bunch of other stuff, including Inception.
Mm-hmm. And he is the connective tissue for next week's chain movie. But it's interesting reading some of the trivia about this movie, because it's kind of apparently got a bit of a reputation as being the go-to movie and screenplay for character arc and development of a story and narrative. And I can kind of see why, going back and rewatching it again, because it sets everything up and everything is super logical. They don't try and do anything funny with jump cuts or any variation of sort of like storytelling, time jumping or anything like that. It is very simple cause and effect throughout the whole movie. And you get really good character development just as the story progresses. The opening is really delightful because it starts off, it's showing you the Amish community without very obviously stating that it's Amish community. You see sort of like people working on the farm and things like that. And obviously there's no modern technology in the Amish community. So you kind of think, oh, is this a period movie? If you haven't watched any of the trailers, and then suddenly you see a carriage going along with sort of indicators attached to it and stuff. And it's like, oh, and then the title card comes up for like 1985. Oh, yeah. So you get that very odd juxtapositioning of when it was released, the modern versus what their everyday life is like in the Amish community. And then it's like a hard jump cut after sort of like seeing a little bit of the interactions and funeral and that sort of stuff. Kelly McGillis's character, what's her name? Rachel. Her and her son Samuel, played by Lucas Haas, they have to travel to Philadelphia.
They're in Philadelphia, but we don't know if that's where they're going to. They're catching a train in Philadelphia to somewhere else, right?
Yeah. But whilst at the train station, Samuel goes to the bathroom and then he witnesses Danny Glover very brutally, but also in his own mannerisms after the fact, very casual, about killing this guy that we very quickly learn is an undercover cop. And then that he manages to elude being seen by these guys, and then the police are called. That's when we get introduced to Harrison Ford's character, who starts talking about it. And the Rachel and Samuel kind of get pulled along at a breakneck speed that they're really not comfortable with, being in this modern day city. Suddenly they're in a police station, and this very young boy it's his first time into the big city. He's experiencing a police station, not the friendliest of first environments to be in at the best of times. And then slowly the story develops, and we learn more about what's happening here. And he sees a picture of I've already forgotten his name. Danny Glover's face, and he points him out to Harrison Ford, and then they quickly try and resolve this, only for it to go completely arse upwards and find that it's not just Danny Glover working rogue and being a twisted cop, but it goes much deeper than that. A gunfight ensues, which is very simple. Then Harrison Ford essentially has to take them back to the Amish community for them to hopefully disappear until the trial, but he's not even sure if there's going to be a trial. So that's the setup for the movie, because it is definitely a tale of two cities and stranger in a lost land for every party involved in this movie. It's really quite clever in that regard, and it uses it very smartly. What did you think of this movie, Trav?
Honestly, I thought it was okay.
Ah.
I thought it was okay. I found the whole corrupt cop angle unconvincing and poorly developed. And they're just like, oh, they're corrupt cops. More information, please. Why are they doing this? How is it that, like, somehow the entire fucking police department is corrupt and they're able to knock off other police officers without any repercussions at all, like it's nothing? The scene where Danny Glover attacked John Book in the car park, well shot and exciting. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, you're gonna walk up to him in the clear daylight, like, well, you know he knows. So
that's fair, yeah.
I kind of found that all like kind of, so anything basically involving the angle for corrupt cops didn't make a lot of sense to me, because they didn't sell it properly for me, and I feel bad saying that, because, as you say, apparently this screenplay is, textbook. But
I think that they, for me personally, I think the moment, the sequence of events where Harrison Ford and his partner, Brett Jennings is their actor, he plays Carter. They go to that sort of like dive bar, and they really roughhouse this black guy, thinking, oh, this is the guy that did it. I think that kind of did enough for me to suggest that this very much is not a city of angel cops. Every one of them is twisted and corrupt in some way, whether it's brutality or whether it's, stealing things to make millions of dollars. I think that did enough for me on that regard. But I get your point for sure. It could have very much spent more time kind of developing that. But this movie doesn't really, until it purposefully slows itself down with the rehabilitation of John Book, it doesn't really go at a slow pace. It's pretty quick.
It does. I mean, I guess that was I wanted to call out that I kind of agree with you, but I felt like this is one of the better performances I've seen from a Harrison Ford, in the sense, I think today, especially, we are kind of used to lazy, grouchy, phoning it in Harrison Ford, because I can't remember the last time we didn't get lazy, grumpy, phoning it in Harrison Ford. Even in Star Wars Episode 7, which I thought he was fine in, it was still lazy, grumpy, phoned it in. You're probably going back, I don't know, the 90s, since I saw him actually put his heart into a performance, and you can tell. Yeah. So, and I think this is possibly one of his most nuanced performances, in that we saw sides of a character that Harrison just usually doesn't bring to the table.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I saw elements of his character from films like The Fugitive. Parts of this reminded me of Patriot Games, which, I mean, probably is just the director of Patriot Games, who, like, John Frankenheimer? I can't remember. But looking at this going, well, that worked in Witness, so we'll just do it too.
Yeah.
And there was sort of, I feel like Harrison was kind of just when he filmed in those characters, he kind of was dragging bits and pieces of what he did here in Witness into those roles. So I was, and as I said, they were just sort of. When was the last time he actually convincingly played a man in love, or a character in a love story? I mean, I'm thinking of films like Sabrina, and that was kind of more of a comedy, I guess, even though it was. I didn't really dig him in that. So it's so rare that he actually seems to play. I mean, the Indiana Jones ones obviously had a romance angle in most of them, but they were, again, it was kind of a different tone. You didn't.
Yeah, it was very, very much the women were in love with him, and he was like, okay, cool. It wasn't him being in love and kind of rationalizing or understanding and resolving those feelings in himself. It's Harrison Ford has always been that charismatic guy that people love, versus him being the person that doesn't know how to deal with that emotion and that reaction.
And especially sort of the forbidden romances here and stuff. So it was a very convincingly played a guy with, as I said, some nuance, some conflicted feelings about what's going on. And we've seen bits and pieces of this elsewhere in his filmography, but I think it rarely in the one place, in the one performance, as he had to do so much. Like the song and dance scene where he's singing the Sam Cooke song in the car. Like, again, it was weird watching him do that because it's not something he does. And it's kind of, I kind of feel like sometimes Harrison figured out what he did well in the early to mid 80s and figured that what he did well sold tickets and made money. So he just kept doing it.
Well, you look at his filmography. Obviously, he shot to fame with Star Wars. That he was, before that, he had been in just a few like TV movies and TV shows, that sort of stuff. He had a small part in Apocalypse Now in '79, and then it was Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, Star Wars again, more Indiana Jones, Witness, Mosquito Coast, Frantic, Working Girl, Indiana Jones again, Presumed Innocent, Regarding Henry, Patriot Games, The Fugitive, Clear and Present Danger, Sabrina, The Devil's Own, Air Force One, and getting into the second half of the 90s, you see him very much taking kind of safe roles. There's not been a single movie that he's been in where it's been a challenge for him. He's playing Harrison Ford in every single movie that he's been in. And the last one that I thought he was any good in was Ender's Game back in 2013.
Which was a complete flop.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of my criticism of him, which is a shame because I think he's actually, again, like many actors, like someone like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is more adventurous than Harrison Ford.
Agreed.
Tom doesn't work outside his safe space much. No. But he's done it a few times. Eyes Wide Shut, Magnolia, Tropic Thunder.
Yep.
He can do stuff. And that's what you see. I think someone like Tom Cruise, you can go, fuck, man, you've got talent. You can really actually do interesting roles.
Yeah.
When you step outside of Tom Cruise running down the street shooting a gun at someone, when Harrison stops being grumpy and lazy, he was capable of more, at least he was. I don't know if he still is because it's been so long. But I guess the way to come back to going, when you see this film, you see, okay, well, I still think it's kind of a tragedy he didn't get an Oscar nod for something else. But, like, this is definitely an Oscar-worthy performance, and this is him at the absolute top of his game, challenging himself and doing something he never did before or since. I thought the young boy was excellent. You know what? My favorite scene, for some reason, in this film was the raising of a barn scene.
I always love that sequence as well. Not only is it beautifully shot and very wholesome, but you still have a lot of that continued character development of the looks and things between him and Rachel. The other guy, Daniel, him kind of before this, Daniel was very kind of like, I don't like this other guy making moves on Rachel because I'm interested now that she's single. But then by the end of the day, it's like they've kind of bonded, but it's not that stereotypical Hollywood bromance kind of thing. It's just, okay, you're actually just a good guy. I can't hold that against you. I'm sorry.
He was an interesting character, actually. I wasn't quite sure what to make of Daniel because he does. Maybe it's because he's got that face. He looks like the kind of guy.
He's got the look of a bad guy.
He was going to end up being a secret terrorist or something because, like, he's that kind of face, right? And maybe it's because he was in Die Hard and he played a really badass in that film. But and then that scene at the start where he's sort of riding the horse funny as a kid.
Yeah.
At the train, and as something was interesting was going to happen to that character, and I'm like, is there going to be some sort of conflict here with Harrison Ford being about that tension? But in the end, I just like the fact that they actually built up an interesting character with a bit of backstory, some conflict with the protagonist, and then just said, yeah, but they just kind of worked it all out.
Yeah,
but it doesn't happen.
No.
It should have been like it should have been a fist fight or something, right? Where Book puts him on his ass, or he has to rescue him or something like this from a drowning boat or something, and he wins his respect that way. But he wins his respect in a completely undramatic, run-of-the-mill, realistic kind of way by being not a douchebag and by putting his head down and bum up and proving himself useful to the community, which is not something you see terribly often in films like this. So. There were certainly elements I really liked about it, and I think you said it last week. The depiction of the Amish was very sympathetic, and they weren't played for laughs, which I mean, I guess they could have been. And it was in the sense it was that scene where they're being harassed in the street by street hooligans, and Book has to kick their ass, which was actually a very satisfying scene. At the same time, I was surprised that they did nothing else. That sort of just seemed to happen in isolation. You mentioned it earlier, but you think you said the resurrection of John Book? I can't remember exactly the word you used.
The rejuvenation.
Rejuvenation. Yeah. That part for me was, again, weak. I didn't really fully get. I mean, like, you kind of got the hint here and there that, like, he's your typical hard-bitten cop. Didn't they really put enough into that for me to really understand who John Book was before he ended up taking the kid to Pennsylvania and stuff like that? His sister's seems kind of sketchy, but it just seemed that you're right. It just moved so quickly through that introduction to who John Book was. I just didn't really feel as invested in his journey as I might have.
I agree. I feel like there were two key elements to his rejuvenation or the development of his character that could have been played a little bit more, and that's his relationship with his sister. Where when he first introduces it, like you don't quickly realize that it's his sister. You think, oh, is this ex-wife or something? It's only later on that I found that, oh, okay, sister, and it was also the fever that Book has, and he starts at like, I'll fucking kill you, and he's getting really violent and aggressive, and it's an interesting element that I think injects some mystery into the character, but it's not filled out enough to make it, or there's no explanation why he apparently had this really violent side that his sister said he likes the violence, he likes being right, he always knows he's being right, and this fever dream outburst of profanity and vitriol and hate, and then him becoming this sort of like, as soon as he's kind of burnt through that, he's like very meek in many ways and respectful of being in the Amish community, and he doesn't make any jokes or anything about being given the Amish clothing or any of that sort of stuff. He just wears it, and I feel like in a lot of, if this movie was made today, there'd be that funny quip of, oh, it's not my style or something like that. He just comes out and he does it. So it's a bit of a 180 character flip that I would kind of agree that it could have been better developed, but at the same time, maybe they just wanted to keep it a nice overall quick story, and they,
I guess so. I mean, there was another scene towards the end where the police chief dude is interviewing his partner, trying to figure out where John is, and he says something. Can you imagine John Book at a prayer meeting or something like that?
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know anything about it. He's a police officer. All we know, he's a police officer who apparently isn't corrupt. So that was not so great for me. I thought the gunfight at the end had its moments, but it felt a little out of place. I did kind of like the way he took them apart, just by outsmarting them a little bit, rather than it being a straight ahead shootout or a fist fight on the top of a tower or something stupid like that. It was get
off of my farm.
Yeah. I like this. The sequence of the corn was kind of was actually kind of brutal, right?
That was a really quite unsettling death because just suffocating from corn. That's pretty brutal.
Well, yeah. I mean, it happens. That was the thinking. Every now and again, you hear about it happening in Australia. Someone falls into a silo full of wheat or something, and you can actually drown in it because you get on top of it. So I once he started dumping the corn, I'm like, well, he's fucked. Yeah. But that was an interesting way to die. But Danny Glover's death was kind of very melodramatic, but kind of very film-like. Yeah. What I'm interested in is, what did you make of the ending scene with the last of the villain there? Was his name again? Joseph Summer. So Schaefer's showdown with John, where all the other Amish people just turn up and stand behind him, and then all of a sudden he starts crying and drops his gun.
I kind of liked it because it was the passive way of ending the fight, and it was that element of, I think they were intending it to be the Amish community and the way that they live their life, and the earlier on him fighting those street thugs when they were attacking the Amish, when he failed that, and you could see just the way that he was. He kind of walked back to the cart in that moment like a child being told off, and he knew that he'd done something wrong, and he just sat in silence and brooded. He knew that he failed that test. And this one, I feel like they tried to make it that he won that, and he did do the right thing, the morally right thing, and something he kind of diffused it and ended it in a way that the Amish community would be happy about, or would be able to at least square away in some way.
But I mean, I guess the way it was indicated is was he just afraid of shooting John in front of those guys? Why wouldn't he just arrest him? I mean, the Amish people weren't going to get in his way, probably.
that was where I was going to come in on it and just say, I don't think that they didn't finish that idea off well enough. I think the intention and the goal is kind of in sight of what they're doing, but I don't think it quite stuck the landing.
It was an interesting ending. I'll pay that. At least they were trying to do something a bit different than your standard, like shoot them off a dam or something like that.
Yeah.
But other thing that sort of occurred to me while I was watching it. I think this is film though that does potentially, and part of a reason maybe why I wasn't as impressed by it as others are, is because I suspect maybe it suffers from the Godfather effect. But this has been such a famous and so beloved and so respected by filmmakers now for over 30 years that it's, and like I mentioned earlier, Harrison Ford, I think, has plagiarized his character here a few times to other roles. That maybe the actual pacing and plot points and structure of his story has been reused so many times now over the last 3 decades that I have seen, when I have not seen Witness before, that it almost feels derivative and dull. Only because I've seen this before.
I'd say that's a fair assessment. I think it's there's an unusual level of familiarity with it, even if you aren't particularly when you watch it, you kind of overall know how things are gonna go. There's kind of safety in the story, in spite of being shown a vicious murder at the start. The hero having his sort of like being taken out of his element and having his partner removed from the equation, and being this uphill struggle for the hero to win, you still feel pretty safe. I don't think there was ever a situation or a moment where you thought, "Oh fuck, John Book is going to die" or anything like that, or they're going to kill the kid, or they're going to do this, or going to do that. You felt pretty safe that it was going to be squared away, and then having this passive ending was a good attempt at kind of twisting it, because in a typical movie, as you say, it would have been a shootout, a fisty fight. It would have been something way more dramatic and physical than this emotional, socially conscious result. You know?
Well, as I sort of said, it was a very sympathetic exploration of a well misunderstood, exploited, and derided part of the community. I mean, like there are reality shows about the Amish. Is that a tradition? Or at least I think is a tradition. Certainly, once you reach a certain age in the Amish community, you sort of sent out into the world for a year, and then you're going to overstay.
Right? Yeah.
I don't know if it's actually a thing, but I've heard it mentioned that maybe it's a thing. So I think there are reality shows based on that. You mentioned last week. There are points in time where I saw characters on screen, and I just found myself thinking, of Amish Paradise by Weirdo Yankovic.
Yeah. You think of the bloody Pauly Shore movie where he's taking the piss out of the Amish and stuff. But in this movie, there are wonderful moments where they are shown as they are, exactly like us. When John Book is first milking the cow, and he says, "What's the matter? Have you never touched a teat before?" And so, like, not one this big. And the fact that he just laughs is like, that is a funny joke, and everyone gets it. It's those honest interactions that make this elevate above a very mediocre movie otherwise, I think.
I don't know that kind of, they're going to sound like, I mean, it is typical sort of rose-colored glasses.
That's fair.
But I was going to say, I don't think that today that they would tell a story like that with such nuance and such subtlety. I think today we talk in broad strokes. If we have an Amish character, they would be a caricature of an Amish character. They would be completely virtuous.
Yeah.
And, they would not be that kind of dirty joke you just mentioned there, right? Like, that's what John just told him, a dirty joke, and made him laugh. That would not be a scene. You would not want to have the Amish person can't possibly laugh at a dirty joke, So they would be only ever applied in broad brushstrokes, unless you had you're very lucky and got yourself one of the top flight of directors, of Christopher Nolan or a Martin Scorsese or someone who was doing that film. But it's again, I just don't think it's the kind of story that would be told today in that way. If you were going to tell a story about the Amish, you would tell it differently now.
Yeah, absolutely agree. But overall, I think we touched on it and then deviated, as we always do. The barn raising scene, love that sequence because it's beautifully shot. There's a lot of character work in it, and it really highlights one of the big things that I like about this movie is the score by Maurice Jarre. And
I did notice that a few times. It was really good.
And it's such a weird juxtaposition of having the Amish community where it's no tech or extremely low, very simple tech with synth over the top. But it worked so wonderfully. It was kind of airy and light, and it really captured that kind of whimsical ideology. But going into the city stuff, it was harder. It was sharper notes and quicker and more punchy, almost like gunshots. And then coming into the countryside and into the Amish community where they work really fucking hard. They're up at 4 a.m. for milking, and it's all that sort of stuff, but the score just works really well and just elevates the character of the environments and the kind of the ways of life that we are shown here, the harshness of the city versus the community spirit of the Amish community.
You mentioned a few times the way it was shot. There's a funny story in the trivia on IMDb if you can dig it up. But apparently, a certain marketing company wanted to shoot a commercial in the style that Witness was shot, and in sort of trying to get someone to do that, they managed to get in touch with John Searle. I think it's John Searle. Basically the cinema photographer of his film, and they hired somebody else.
Wow.
They wanted it to look like Witness. They had the guy who shot Witness, but they chose someone else. But it looks, that scene in particular really stood out to me. I can't quite put my finger on what I liked about it, but it was just, it just looked great. It sounded great. It was in the context of the story. It was an amazing, and it's to go to show an amazing scene, but it doesn't necessarily move the story along a whole lot. No, it tells us a great deal about the people who are in the story.
Yeah, again, this is a great example of spending time with characters and showing interesting characters and the relationships that these characters have with each other, and with when Rachel is sitting down and sewing, and they have that conversation and saying, I bet they're not saying anything good. And it's like, no, they're very much not saying anything good about your relationship with John Book. It's that catty conversation, and it's just more. It just elevates the storytelling higher up. I think.
You were mentioning it earlier, but this is the first Hollywood film of Peter Weir. This is his first non-Australian film.
Yeah.
And I think you covered off some of the films he did there in this, and you worked with Harrison Ford straight after this.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to direct The Mosquito Coast. We talked about it last week. Dead Poets, Green Card, Fearless, The Truman Show, Master and Commander, Far Side of the World, and The Way Back, which is also not great. But he's, I think, an overlooked director, unfortunately, in the sense that I think he's a great talent, because I think this film here shows what an amazing storyteller and peak he was. And I think also Mosquito Coast, I know we won't be doing that next week, but I think that's an overlooked film from the 80s as well. That was, I remember watching it as a kid and finding it utterly compelling. So Peter Weir, one of our greatest imports from Australia, and I'll say it again, he got his start making government-funded films.
Hey, everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. That's what I'm saying. How else are we going to get our film about vegan zombies off the ground if it's not for government funding? Who else would give us the money?
Now, I alluded to it earlier on. The connective tissue for our next and my final of the chain movies is Lucas Haas. Now, Lucas Haas played Samuel, and we haven't really talked about his performance in this, but he was absolutely charming, an incredible delight, very innocent, bright-eyed, bright boy, plays the role incredibly well, and his relationship that he builds up with Harrison Ford is wonderful. My favorite element of that is where he's showing Harrison Ford around, and he just here, hold my cat, and just shoves it straight into John Book's hands. And it's like, okay, this is how you do it. It was such another honest interaction between two characters. It was really well done.
My favorite part was he in the train station and he walked up to the Orthodox Jewish man thinking it was the and you're like, that was a really cool little scene. Him staring up, being transfixed by the statue.
Yeah, just beautiful moments, really beautiful moments. But the movie that is carrying on, Lucas Haas has a bit of an ongoing relationship with Rian Johnson. He has appeared in numerous movies. He played the Pin in Brick, but that is not the movie we are going to. He makes an appearance in the movie we are going to, though, The Brothers Bloom.
Oh, God.
Ha! Fuck you. You were watching it, and I love this movie.
All right.
It's a con movie, and we've got lots of possibilities of where to go after that with Rachel Weisz, Mark Ruffalo, Adrian Brody, Robbie Coltrane.
Yeah, okay. Well, we want to talk horror films. We're going to try and angle from this one to a horror film, so that leaves we're open to many possibilities, including The Last Jedi. Boom! I went there.
I was thinking more following on to the Predators movie that Adrian Brody.
Yeah, well, that's horrible on a number of fronts.
Exactly.
The funny thing is, I actually kind of liked that. I didn't hate that like everybody else. It was better than the fucking Shane Black one that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, but no, there are many options here. So this is one of those films that everybody says was a lot better than its reputation that precedes it.
Well, I saw this before it had been officially released. I was at the BFI. I think it was at Raindance Film Festival when I was still working in London, and I got to meet Rian Johnson after the screening. He was incredibly charming, and I was absolutely in love with this movie. It's a wonderful heist/con movie with a real heart of gold.
Yes, it's been recommended to me multiple times, and well, maybe I will be proven wrong, but it'll be wonderful. So time will tell.
Yes. So that is next week's Chain movie, The Brothers Bloom. So if you're interested, watch along, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it as well.
I mean, it was a historic flop, but I mean, that does not by any means mean it was no good. I mean, it used to be a show I used to watch on they made their own video podcast before it was popular. It was called Movies You May Have Missed. Oh
yeah.
I really, really wish they still made, because it was such a great show and I found so many great films. And this was probably their hobby horse to ride. It was always, this is the one film that, they would recommend time and time again for people to try and find out, seek out. So if, like me, you're cynical because you think Rian Johnson's kind of a prat, but despite the fact Knives Out was good. No. I just think he's any filmmaker who disses their audience is a prat. Despite being a very talented prat, the prat nonetheless.
All right, fair. I'll pay that.
But even if you think Rian Johnson's kind of a prat, and like me, you really didn't like what he did with Star Wars, Knives Out was fucking great. Yes. So maybe this is maybe Star Wars was the odd one out for those of us who didn't like it, and The Brothers Bloom will bring me fully back on board with the Rian Johnson train.
Have you watched Brick?
I don't think I have. No,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
Again, it's supposed to be so good. It just looks dull.
It's really good, and I think it's definitely got a place in my heart because he ran out of funding. And wasn't able to get a proper sort of like editing suite or anything like that. And he ended up editing it on his own iMac at home. And it's like, yeah, I can respect that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then now he's a big deal, right? He's done Star Wars. He did Knives Out, which is a huge hit. Knives Out 2 is going to happen. He's directed Breaking Bad episodes. He's eating a bit and a bag of chips.
Now, as I'm the only one who actually had any time on his hands this week, I will be talking about Greta Gerwig's 2019 version of Little Women. And it's available on Amazon Prime Video.
Lose a bet?
Huh?
Did you lose a bet?
No. And this movie is awesome.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a chick flick, right?
Yes, but it's so open, and the performances by all of them in this movie are so fucking good. You could say that it's a chick flick, but it's so much better because the comedy, the way that the characters just deal with everything, it is just really, really funny. It is really engaging. This movie is... I'm going to say it now. This movie is going to be the movie that everyone will go back to after all of the young cast in this are fucking huge stars.
I mean, not already. Cerise Ronan's already a big star.
Yeah, Charisse Ronan is already a big star.
They're all big stars already.
But she is. There's no stopping her. I've been in love with her performances from day one, I think. And Byzantium, if you haven't watched that, it's her and Gemma Arterton. It's a great movie by Neil Jordan. Really, really good. Emma Watson, never done anything before in her entire life, of course. Ironically, I think she's possibly the weakest because she cannot do anything but an intelligent, articulate English accent, whereas the rest of her sisters all have very obvious American accents. So it does stand out, but her performance and the way that she plays the role, phenomenal. Florence Pugh, she is the sort of like darling at the moment. She's coming up. She was in Midsummer, which got a lot of praise. She was in Fighting with My Family.
I think I said at the time it was a film that had no business, absolutely no business being as good as it was.
Yeah, it's got a lot of talent in that movie overall. Eliza Scanlon plays the fourth sister, Beth. She has the least to do in this movie, and it kind of feels a little bit like, oh, she's the also-ran. But what she has, she does really well with. Laura Dern, great seeing her in movies again. She's a really good actress, and she does a really good performance in this. Timothy Chalamet, he is he's going to be in Dune. I think releasing this Christmas. He is brilliant. He is this generation's what's the guy from Pride and Prejudice?
Colin Firth?
Huh?
Colin Firth?
Yeah. This movie, the way that he is portrayed in this could very easily be his moment for that kind of thing. But he also shows nice variety and depth of character throughout the whole thing as well. Bob Odenkirk turns up as the father. He's not in it very much, but he's charming as Bob Odenkirk so easily is. James Norton is a face that I recognize purely because I decided, for the fuck of it, to watch the remake of Flatliners that came out a couple of years ago. That was not a good movie at all.
First one wasn't good.
Yeah. The first one, it's a cult classic in the perfect term of it's not actually great, but you've have fond memories of it for some reason. But James Norton is very good in it. In this role, Chris Cooper is in this movie, and he is quality Chris Cooper on display. And of course, Meryl Streep, who, there's not a single word of praise that hasn't already been levied against her. She is the gold standard. And this is directed by Greta Gerwig, who she previously worked with Cheryl Rowan on Lady Bird, which was
really good.
Yeah, really, really good. And she's a name that I've heard bandied around quite a lot, but she's fucking talented.
Have you seen Frances Ha?
No.
I've been on this. I've been on the Greta Gerwig bandwagon for a little while now. Since Frances Ha came out a few years ago, she's a really, really promising young actor. Well, probably it looks like she's heading more towards directing now than acting. She's a fine actress as well, and she's going to direct Barbie next, which is going to be fascinating, considering the writer is Noah Baumbach, who is I think he's actually Greta's partner, if I'm not mistaken. But he wrote Frances Ha. He wrote The Squid and the Whale and Marriage Story from last year. And now he's going to write Barbie.
That is such a weird thing. And they've got Margot Robbie to be Barbie.
Which makes sense.
That's a very bizarre.
It's a weird combination. It's like getting Tarantino in, to direct Sex and the City 3. I mean, you go and see it just out of pure bloody-minded curiosity.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's going to make sense.
Yeah. But every single person involved in this movie is firing on all cylinders. I heartily recommend everyone watch it. It is a bit long. It's just over I think it's 2 hours, 10 minutes in total. But if you like, it's kind of does it a bit of a disservice too similarly to it. But just the period that it's set in and the type of social conversations that are happening throughout it. If you like any of the Jane Austen adaptations, that genre and that subgenre of movies, you are going to fucking love this. This is really, really good. I was not expecting it at all. I just thought, fuck it, why not? I'm really interested in Dune. I want to just see a bit more. I'm a fan of many of the people in this movie. I'll give it a shot. And I was just enraptured. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really good. I'm not going to say much more about it because I just want people to go out and experience it. And it's on Amazon Prime. It is absolutely worth your time. Really, really great.
It's a strong recommendation because I would instantly look at this and go, no. Because Little Women, and you're right, that feeds in my head that says, file under Jane Austen, which I hate those films.
Yeah.
And it looks like period films, just generally speaking, don't do it for me. Plus, it looks like a chick flick. But you've almost sold me on it. I'm curious now.
It's got its own. There's a vibrancy to the way that all of the sisters act and interact, and the freshness of the direction. It feels like as it actually is. This is an adaptation of Little Women by modern day women, delivering it so there is. I feel like anyone would be able to actually connect with this and go, "Yep, I get it." And yes, it is set in this in the period time of around the Civil War. I think it was the Civil War or the First World War. I can't remember exactly now. I'm getting confused. But the way that they talk, the speed of the quips between them, even though they are still very much in that classical conversational tone, it still feels very fresh and modern. You could so easily redo this whole movie, keep the same damn script, and just put them in modern day clothing in a modern day setting, and it would feel great. Really good. Really impressed.
In your opinion, I'm going to put this out there because I'm curious.
Okay.
Is it offensive, or is it what's the word? Not PC? Is it not PC to call a film a chick flick these days? Now, which is a little bit outside the realm of what we normally do, but I'm sort of, my instant thing is like, obviously I'm of a different generation. I go like, chick flicks was definitely a thing. Is that terminology a little outdated, do you think?
I wonder if it's outdated now, because just from my own experience of movies and TV shows and things coming out, most things are generally focused on one genre or another in many, many ways. Like, the Stranger Things, it's got a lot of strong females in it, but I think that it definitely more leans towards the traditional genetic side of men-focused ideology.
It's certainly a bloke flick as well. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
The anti-chick flick would be Fast and Furious. So even though obviously there are women who like those films and there are men who love Jane Austen films, but the predominant, if I'm going out to make a film like Little Women, who am I going to sell it to? I'm selling it to women.
Yeah, but I think that there's definitely still that. I think the idea of chick flick is something more marketing that push now. I think that there's just that openness of, no, anyone can watch this movie. Yeah, it's about young women growing up in a period of time, but anyone can enjoy this. I'm not they're not purposefully excluding people from its design. I think the last time that a big chick flick movie came out was possibly Sex and the City 2, where I don't think there are any straight guys, or however they want to identify that, or just go, yeah, I'm going to watch that.
I think it's a new genre of chick flick. I mean, I'm going to assume now that it is not offensive, and if you're listening later, or you are listening now and you disagree with me, jump on our Facebook page and disagree with me. Happy to hear it. Happy to hear your reasoning, because that's why I'm asking. I don't really want to most dicks, but I'm asking the question because I'm like, I wonder if people are not cool with that anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of things like Charlie's Angels, which is a slightly different tone of chick flick, in a sense. It's an action film, but it was quite obviously aimed at women, because it's all about girl power, and that was kind of the whole. I mean, that may have been why it flopped, but
Now, have you actually watched that?
I haven't. I've watched a lot of. I've seen quite a lot of commentary on it because it did well, and then of course Elizabeth Banks came out and Ryan Johnson, her audience, by saying, "If you didn't go see this film, you're a sexist." Or that is way her comments have been interpreted.
So I think that actually the Charlie's Angels movie thing is an interesting thing to bring to the table, because the McG versions, Charlie's Angels and Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, they were dressed up to be chick flicks, action chick flicks, I think. But you just scrape a little tiny amount of paint off of that veneer, and suddenly you see that, no, this is a bloke movie about sexy women beating the fuck out.
I would never have argued for a second that those were ever in any way even pretending to be chick flicks, because you had Cameron Diaz dancing in her underpants in the trailer, the first one. They were quite obviously targeting that film as men. The women were part of the male gaze. It was, they were obviously kind of playing them as sex objects, as much sex objects you kick ass. Whereas this new one, not so much.
Well, watching the new one, which I did a couple of weeks ago.
I'm sorry.
I've been very bored. It again tries to push that feminism, girl power message, but doesn't really actually translate to the story that they're telling or the characters that they are showing you or how they are even shown. It's very generic in the end, and it's like, okay, I thought that this was going to be something a little bit more interesting. I thought that, like, Ocean's 8 did a better job of kind of putting those social ideas of the female cast, all female cast put together, doing things slightly different to what the men did, and making it actually an interesting talking point of it being the women. That did a much better job of it versus this one, where it's like, okay, you're kind of only skin deep on the message that you're trying to push.
I mean, this is back to, I don't wanted to get into too political. It's just an idea that popped into my head is whether chick flicks a term we should be using anymore or not. So every now and again, I think I've talked about it before. I found as a YouTube channel called The React channel, Fine Brothers Entertainment. They got their start doing the React videos, and it was like kids react, adults react, and there's teens react. Oh, yeah. And teens react to Seinfeld last year, I think. And a couple of the kids were actually like, "This is really offensive. There's no way this TV show would be allowed to air today with these attitudes." And I'm like, "Attitudes? What are you talking about?" And they were talking about the clip, the famous episode in Seinfeld where Jerry and George are outed as gay when they're not, and the whole running joke was, "Oh no, everyone's going to think we're gay." Anything wrong with that? Like their attitude towards, these kids are watching and going, "That attitude towards homosexuality is horrible." And I'm like, no, but it was made 25 years ago, right? Like, the attitude to it was a different world. Like, being gay wasn't quite as cool as it is now. So, but this is one of those moments where I suddenly realized that I'm really old, and that I'm not quite as what my ideas aren't necessarily the mainstream now, or at least a lot of some very different ideas about what's okay and what's not okay and what's offensive these days. So I'm sort of throwing it out there going, should I stop using the term chick flick? Is that like something that people can't like anymore? And yeah, it's interesting. You're right. The straight bat ahead, Steel Magnolias style chick flick is a little bit rarer today when they're trying to repackage the chick flick, which I think a film like Ocean's 8, a film like Charlie's Angels, a film like the 2016, maybe Ghostbusters, maybe not. But like, again, trying to insert the girl power message into a male-dominated genre and then try and sell that to women. Yeah. It's a bit like selling skin cream to men. Right? Yeah. Where's our market for action films is kind of saturated right now. Who else can we sell action films to?
Yeah. I think that it's a phrase that people probably don't want to use because does kind of feel derogatory, because we should just view movies as movies and not gendered or anything like that. But it's going back and like talking about their kids' attitudes to Seinfeld and stuff. It's time is always the hard thing to bring into modern conversation. I think it's like the 25th anniversary of Seven coming out.
Yeah.
I shared that on Facebook, and one of my friends, Richard, big fan of the show, he said, "Oh, I can't really watch this movie anymore because of Kevin Spacey." And it's that question of, can you separate the art from the artist? And that's an ongoing debate. Time has revealed that Kevin Spacey is a fucking foul human being, but he did fucking good work. And time has educated society to a point where going around saying, "Oh, gay," is not appropriate. And that sort of language has changed now. But does that mean that we have to go back and change this? We've talked about this repeatedly of, things like them editing classics like Gone with the Wind and all of that sort of stuff, and putting addendum notes at the front of it saying that social attitudes have changed in this time. Fucking hope so, because if it's the same as what it was 50, 100 years ago, we've not progressed as a society. So we should be able to change, and it shouldn't also make those sorts of things a taboo.
It's only we've talked about it ad nauseam. We won't go down that rabbit hole again. I'm going to say that I do find myself quite regularly confronting that question more and more, because more and more people have been Me Too'd, and so they should have been.
Yes.
And I have this conversation with friends of mine who are huge Michael Jackson fans, and my question is, how can you listen to Michael Jackson without thinking about what he did? But very every now and again, I'll catch myself watching a Kevin Spacey movie on TV. Or on streaming, and you'd be like, "Geez, he's fucking good." But you're like, or there's a thing I saw recently in a conversation somewhere online where people were, for want of a better term, Me Tooing David Bowie. In that David Bowie is now, people, he's a piece of shit. He had sex with underage girls back in the 70s and stuff. And I read an interview with one of them once, and they didn't sound like they liked it. And you're like, well, obviously is not okay, but if that's the truth, it's like I don't know how true that is. It's just something I've read someone say. And so, and you go, and then that is quite a confronting thing for me to read, because while as much as I like someone like Kevin Spacey as his actor, well, not a massive loss to my life that I'm not going to watch Kevin Spacey films anymore. But if it turned out that David Bowie was a genuinely shitty human being, and that was like something that actually, if we had a Bill Cosby type situation, a number of if there were victims, I'm not saying they are, if women came out and said, "Hey, he is a piece of shit and this is what he did to me," then I'd be finding myself in the same situation as my friends who love Michael Jackson, right? They love Michael Jackson. They're like, they're going to be burying their heads in the sand going, "I don't know if I believe all that." And I don't know, I would then be sitting in that position as well going, I don't want to have to believe this stuff, but here we are. I'd like to think I react better, but it would be a harder choice to make.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm rare creature in that I feel like I can separate the art from the artist, and especially for actors, because their job is to portray someone else. I'm not watching Kevin Spacey in this movie. I am watching the character John Doe for Seven, for example, and the whole movie it's a part of a movie, and the movie is phenomenal. He is a fucking asshole. He is horrible and should burn in hell. Never gonna hold him up as a moral human being or anything like that, but he is, or at the very least, he was incredibly talented, and I can't deny that. I'm not going to box that away. It's like, nope, that's no man's land. I'm not going in there.
I think we've said it before. I think there's a line, right? A line someone has to cross it. Like, whereas, well, you're right. You can separate the art from artist, but there is some people out there who are just so genuinely reprehensible. I don't know that, even your line might be crossed eventually. So
that is not a challenge for anyone out there.
absolutely not. Like I am going to say there was a band out there called Lost Prophets. I'm not going to talk about what the lead singer of that band did. If you're interested to find out, you can jump on Google. Don't at me afterwards if you find out you don't like what you read, because the guy he made Kevin Spacey look like an angel. So I not that I was a huge fan of that band, but I'm like, I think there's a line everyone can cross. Whereas, it's not where we ended up. Decided that this is an unusual place where this conversation has ended up. We've said it before, but it is an interesting one to try and do. And I think you're right. You can separate them, and maybe your line for separating the artist and the art, what someone has to do before it becomes too much for even you to handle. Would be, I'm sure you have a line somewhere in the sand, like, well, Hitler, he was kind of a shithead, but his paintings were pretty good.
Well, there's even then I can kind of argue a lot of the things that he did, like pushing forwards with the Autobahn and timetabling and things like that. Those are good things, but in Hitler's case, vastly outweighed by genocide.
Yeah.
Genocide is kind of a hard line.
It's hard to get past that one.
Yeah, it's quite hard.
We started with Hitler. Maybe we should end there, because before we get too much further down this rabbit hole and get sued or freaking cancelled on Twitter, it's going to happen one day. I swear to God.
One day. That's the goal. We'll know we've made it when we've cancelled.
Your book's going to get options right, and then you're going to end up getting James Gunned.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the show. It's only 2 conversations, but we still managed to talk for over an hour. We talk a lot of bollocks, don't we? Next week, we are going to be talking about The Brothers Bloom. Amazing Rian Johnson movie that is absolutely going to win Travis's heart. I have no doubt. I have every doubt. He's a difficult man.
A grumpy old curmudgeon, that is true.
And we will have a few more topics of discussion for you then. I will probably be talking about the impending release of Super Mario 3D All-Stars on Nintendo Switch. They're releasing Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy 1. It's coming out on Friday, and I'm looking forward to playing those games again.
Yeah.
But,
I don't put any promises, but I have some time in between cheating on George. I will try and get on to see if I can catch an episode or 2 of a new season of The Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Very big fans of season 1.
I have many thoughts, but I will wait for you to view it before I unload. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.